You might not realize this, but if you ever learned piano from a traditional method book, there's a really good chance your note reading was sabotaged before it even began. And it all comes from one teaching mistake nearly every adult beginner learned. And that mistake is being locked into one hand position. Many method books keep students in fixed positions for much too long. And what this does is it teaches your fingers to expect locations instead of reading actual notes. Basically, your brain just stops scanning for shifts. Your brain goes into almost neutral from the get go. It becomes dependent on a finger to note relationship instead of a cymbal to pitch relationship. To demonstrate what I'm talking about, I'm going to pull up a copy of the C major pentascale. Basically, you can see this. A lot of times in books, this is referred to as C position. And while there's nothing inherently wrong with it, by staying here too long, you basically shut down the reading process before it even begins. Let me show you what I'm talking about. If we look at this piece of music, I'll make it a little bit larger. We are going to start by placing our right hand first finger on middle C and our left hand fifth finger on what is sometimes called bass C. So if I put my hands on the piano, basically I am here. Okay, that's totally fine. And learning to play in this position is definitely okay. In fact, it's even necessary. But when it becomes a problem is if this is the only spot you play in, what happens is pretty soon the whole reading process is shut off. Instead of recognizing, for example, this note as being D, you see that and you just assume, oh, it's my second finger. I see that is D. And the same is true maybe for my left hand. Third finger. Oh, 3 is on E. Oh, I see that. I'm always going to play my third finger. Well, that's really great until you run into a different song and maybe your hand is sitting like this, or like this, or like this. Now you have no idea where you are. I'm going to pause this video for just a minute and I'm going to pull up another example and I'm going to show you what I mean. Here I have an example from my Keystart Foundation's book 2, actually. It's Marche Militaire by Franz Schubert. And what we have done here, and I've done this on purpose actually, but this is where I will use this to explain why. Now, if we look at where my right hand is going to be, fourth finger right here is going to be on G. Okay, what that has done, and I'll focus on right hand just to keep this simple. Left hand, obviously the same is true, but now if I have gotten accustomed to having my right hand here in C position, when I see the note D, this note right here, my first instinct is to play this second finger, which is all well and good if I am in C position. But let's look at this. Here is Marche Militaire. My fourth finger is on G. What has just happened, now my hand is sitting on D, E, F, G, A. Well, if I am playing Marche Militaire, this is what I should play, but when I see this D right here, my instinct is going to be to play this finger. Well, it's going to be this note. It's not going to be D. And I have seen this confuse students who have not learned to truly read their music. They always think the second finger is D, and the first thing I have to say is remember which finger has D. And it's like, oh, wait, I don't know where I am. Because what's happened is they're no longer reading the music. They're relying on this finger always being on the same note. What has happened is they have likely used a method book that kept them in one position for way too long, and it basically shut off that entire reading process. Now, what I do differently is I focus on a very intensive reading process from the get-go. We need to teach the brain to actually read the notes, just like you read words on a page, and anticipate even the idea of moving, right? Because if you've watched someone who plays professionally, right, their hands are all up and down the keyboard. They aren't staying in one position. They are moving, and to do that, they are reading the music. So I'm going to pause this again, and I'm going to switch over to yet one more example. Okay, here I have The Happy Farmer by Robert Schumann, and this is a case where your hands actually start moving. I do this very early on. I try not to leave students in positions, whether it's C position or G position or even middle C position. These are all common and it's fine to play from them, but I don't want that to be exclusively what you're playing from. We want to learn to start moving our hands around the keyboard. Well, the way we learn to start moving is to read the notes. And if we have shut down that process of not thinking about what note is with what finger, you're never going to get off the ground. And of course, sight reading is always going to be difficult. Let's look at Happy Farmer. I've already filled in some of this. Looking at left hand, we see that fourth finger starts on G. And in the right hand, first finger starts on E. So now if I play these first four notes, basically, I'm going to have my hands here. 4 is on G, 1 is on E. And I can go ahead and play these first few notes. But now what happens when I come to the next measure? Now I use circled finger numbers in the beginning to help students realize that, oh, there's a move happening here. Eventually we drop these out because we have trained in the skill of reading the notes. But that's a little further down the road. What I've done here is I've circled this finger number right here. We started out with 1 on E, but now as we are playing, we basically have to read on the fly and realize that, oh, my hand was here, now it's going to here. Well, now we have a completely different set of notes under our fingers. F, G, A, B, C. Where a minute ago we had E, F, G, A, B. So if you are locked into a single position, this becomes extraordinarily difficult. And it's no wonder that sight reading can trip people up if this happens. Now I'm going to bring this a little bit more into view. And let's just play through this first line. I'll demonstrate the movement. So I start out with 4 on G in the left, 1 on E in the right. And here I go. Now I see the move coming. I'm going to slide my right hand up. So I am reading the notes. I know that this is F, A, C, A, G. You have to be able to recognize the notes. As fast as you can tell me that this is the letter F in writing, you have to be able to tell me that this is an F also. It literally comes down to reading the notes on the staff, which isn't difficult if you are trained properly, if you don't get locked into just thinking that the same finger is always going to be on the same note. If we start moving from the get-go, sure, it's a little bit challenging, but no more so than learning anything else. And if this becomes your default habit, your default pattern, then reading music really is not as difficult as many people make it out to be. In fact, this is what I teach in all of my courses, and I have a very good start on this in my free beginner course, Key Start Foundations 1. All you need to do is click on the link below to start my free beginner course, and that eliminates this issue from the very beginning. I go into this and other ways to get actually comfortable reading notes from the get-go. So just comment beginner below and get access to my free course. As I was saying, students often stop seeing the staff as a map. And adults especially struggle because old habits are stronger, right? The longer you do something, the more ingrained that habit becomes. It isn't that we can't change it. I do this all the time with my adult students. So even if you've been doing this for quite a while, it is something I can definitely help you to change. But the first step is to become aware of it. And just realizing that many method books rely on note reading by keeping students locked into positions. And this is what I fix from day one with my Key Start Foundations Book 1. I teach music reading as a movement-based skill, not a position-based habit. Students learn to read actual note direction, shift comfortably. They can shift on the piano like I just did without panicking. And they really develop that internal reading radar instead of relying exclusively on finger numbers. Now, I do recommend reading finger numbers and notes together. That's another story. But this is a part of that puzzle. Instead of trapping students into a single hand position, my Key Start Foundations Book 1 frees them from that from the very beginning. You need to learn to read music the way skilled musicians do. You need to notice movement, direction, relationships, and actually recognize or read the individual notes. And that's how we prevent this entire problem from ever happening. This is why so many adult beginners think they can't read music, when the truth is they were taught a system that never asked them to. When you learn the piano playing made simple way, this way of playing that I just showed you, playing correctly, becomes normal. And if you're an adult beginner who feels like note reading never really clicked, it's not you. It's the method you were given. Your brain was trained to memorize where your hands sit instead of reading how the music moves. And as I've said, that's exactly why I created Key Start Foundations Book 1. It resets your reading from the ground up the right way. And of course, if you want to go deeper, my full paid course builds on this system so that you develop confident, fluent reading ability that actually lasts.